This is Earth. There's Venus, Mercury, and the Sun. Even though Mercury is twice as close to the Sun as Venus, Venus is the hotter planet. Why? Carbon dioxide, otherwise known as CO2. Venus's atmosphere is saturated with CO2, driving a relentless greenhouse effect. Back on Earth, our own CO2 levels have been rising sharply since the Industrial Revolution. And now we are warming up, too. Granted, our planet has been hotter before and colder, but for the past 10,000 years, a period spanning all modern human achievements, from farming to piñatas to frequent flyer miles, Earth's temperature has remained relatively stable. That stability is ending. Climate change is happening. Is it fixable? Who's working on solutions? There truly are problems we can't solve, cancers without cures, diseases we can't yet treat. But this problem, climate change, we can solve. There's no good reason not to try, given what's at stake. Unchecked global warming threatens to drive half the planet's species into extinction. In 10 years, the Arctic could literally vanish in summer. Agriculture could be severely disrupted, and sea level could rise dramatically, forcing millions to flee. We'd see more extreme storms, wildfires, droughts, ethnic conflicts, even the potential collapse of civilization, some warn. The gloom can feel overwhelming, but many believe it's a huge opportunity too. The U.S., for instance, accounts for only 5% of the world's population, yet produces nearly a quarter of global CO2. That's not the only greenhouse gas, just the most troublesome right now. Many Americans do worry about climate change. Others believe humans aren't the cause. But 84% of scientists, numerous faith groups like the Evangelical Climate Initiative, Fortune 500 companies, and the Pentagon, the U.S. Department of Defense no less, confirm that humans are driving this big problem. The question, is solving climate change feasible? We need people fighting the good fight, and we need the next generation to be up to the task. A huge stumbling block stands in our way. There's no cost to emitting CO2, no penalty for dumping carbon-based energy's byproducts into the atmosphere. That handicaps clean energy efforts. Scientists once underestimated how fast warming would happen. Observations show global warming is unfolding faster than older models predicted. That jolted us awake. So we started traveling, exploring potential solutions. Our first stop, wind power. Wind is a renewable resource and revives local economies. In Pennsylvania's rejuvenated Rust Belt, laid-off steelworkers now build turbines. In West Texas, wind turns dusty farmland into gold. Outside the cotton town of Roscoe, we meet Cliff. He saw wind turbines sprouting across neighboring properties and decided to join in before the opportunity blew away. All the developers were used to dealing with large ranches, big tracts of land with few owners. But here, every parcel belongs to a small family farmer. For 20 or 30 years, these families struggled. Wind power could help. At first, developers resisted. But Cliff persuaded them that West Texas's terrain is perfect, flat land, good roads, and strong winds. After all, he jokes, we've spent our lives cursing the wind that ruined our cotton fields. Turns out it's a blessing. Before the turbines, Roscoe was in decline. Its Dairy Queen had even closed. That's the kiss of death for a small town. But along came wind. Soon, Roscoe boasted one of the largest wind farms anywhere, benefiting 400 local landowners. Each turbine pays a farmer up to $15,000 annually in electricity royalties, on top of being able to keep farming. The project will power 250,000 homes. Wind helps people move home again, like the Haynes family's kids and grandkids. We used to wait for rain cursing the wind. Now that wind we cursed is our salvation. Indeed, wind power is ramping up in some regions. The U.S. Department of Energy says wind in Texas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, and Montana alone could exceed all U.S. electricity needs. Globally, wind can generate terawatts of clean power, potentially more than enough for our current usage of 16 terawatts worldwide. But there's a catch. Coal plants are springing up even faster than wind farms. Over the next 8 years, China plans to build more new coal capacity than the entire U.S. currently operates. The West's pollution built up our atmosphere for decades. Now China is catching up. We have no moral high ground to stand back and say they should fix it first. Meanwhile, green energy technology is booming in Europe and Asia. America risks falling behind. The takeaway, leading the world in clean energy would spur innovation, create jobs, and bolster national security. Green is the new red, white, and blue, some say. Indeed, the U.S. military sees climate change and dependence on foreign oil as national security issues. We speak with Dan Nolan, a decorated vet and Green Hawk. The Department of Defense uses over 300,000 barrels of oil daily, one of the world's largest consumers. Fuel convoys in war zones are expensive and dangerous. Troops pay in blood for that fuel. One solution, reduce fuel use. In Iraq, generals discovered air conditioning accounted for a third of the Army's fuel consumption. Tents in the scorching desert used huge cooling systems, wasting fuel. Spray foam insulation can cut that usage drastically and pay for itself within months. Future dome shelters could be self-powered with solar panels, saving soldiers' lives and taxpayer dollars. The military support could also stimulate industries. Large-scale battery storage and advanced renewables might get a boost, like microchips did in past decades. Sometimes the Army leads, and the country soon follows. Think President Truman's integration of the armed forces. But entrenched bureaucracy resists rapid changes. It's up to bold leaders, both uniformed and elected, to push a greener military forward. Many used to view climate change as a remote threat, but it's already biting. In the Cascade Mountains of Washington, warmer winters mean more rain and less snow. That harms hydroelectric power, salmon populations, and farming. Glaciers are disappearing in the Cascades, Sierras, Rockies, Alps, Himalayas, spelling trouble for hundreds of millions reliant on glacial melt. Transportation also feeds the CO2 beast. Cars, trucks, planes, ships, and trains produce about 14% of global emissions. Demand for fuel is rising globally, so improving efficiency is key. Take truckers. When they sleep, they idle engines for heat or AC, burning a gallon of diesel hourly. An external power unit can cool or heat for a fraction of that fuel. If all American truckers used such units, they'd cut CO2 by 11 million tons, saving over 1 billion gallons of fuel annually, a fifth of the Defense Department's usage. But efficiency alone won't solve everything. We also need alternatives. Automakers increasingly look to biofuels. Ethanol from corn or sugar has limits, though it's helped reduce gasoline dependence. More promising might be algae-based fuels, which yield more gallons per acre and can be refined into diesel or jet fuel. That technology is still maturing. Another route is electrified transport. Plug-in hybrids and electric cars solve many problems. New battery systems using lithium-ion cells could make them affordable and let people charge at home. If widely adopted, utilities might use those parked cars as a massive grid battery, providing electricity back to the grid at peak times. But law and policy can hamper or help. Regional electricity regulations can prevent homeowners from selling surplus power or prevent utility payments for that surplus. We need bold leadership to rewrite outdated rules. In Alaska, change is already happening. Melting sea ice threatens coastal villages like Newtok, which must relocate at a cost of $130 million. Meanwhile, at Chena Hot Springs, entrepreneur Bernie Carl uses geothermal water that's cooler than McDonald's coffee to power the resort cheaply. He also cools an ice museum with geothermal energy for just $12 daily. On fossil fuels, it'd be $750. People debate if global warming is man-made or natural. Who cares? I want clean water, clean air. Geothermal here saves money too. It's not just Alaska. Off the Oregon coast, a massive dead zone reappears each year, likely driven by warming-induced changes in ocean currents. Marine life is suffocating. Scientists aren't sure if it's reversible. Buildings produce 40% of U.S. CO2 emissions, more than transportation. A fraction of U.S. electricity is renewable. The rest comes from coal, 50%, natural gas, and nuclear. Coal is the dirtiest fossil fuel, yet no large-scale way exists to capture and store coal's CO2 economically. Tree planting is nice, but one medium-sized coal plant in 10 days can negate hundreds of thousands of planted trees over 100 years. Architecture 2030, founded by Ed and Christina Mazraya, aims to make all new buildings and major renovations carbon neutral by 2030. They say if we do that, we can phase out coal plants by 2030. Switching to highly efficient lighting could reduce global electricity use by 12%. Just changing all bulbs in New York apartments could power the subway on the savings. Cities like Chicago and New York are greening rooftops. White or green roofs reflect sunlight or cool the building, saving billions in air conditioning. The Bank of America Tower in Manhattan uses half the electricity of similar buildings. The Empire State Building is undergoing a massive retrofit. If it can be done there, nobody else has an excuse. Energy efficiency, the cheapest new energy source, could knock 5 terawatts off our total need of 16. It's like discovering a virtual Saudi Arabia of savings. Industries can also reuse wasted heat, like steel mills that convert hot exhaust into electricity. Or consider the enormous gains from simply building more efficient refrigerators, then recycling the old ones properly so their harmful chemicals don't escape into the atmosphere. Climate change is also devastating forests. Huge swaths of pine across the Rocky Mountain states are killed by bark beetles thriving in warmer winters. Dying forests no longer hold carbon. They release it. A vicious cycle. Meanwhile, scorching drought and catastrophic wildfires are on the rise. As the sun beams down 86,000 terawatts, solar stands out. Massive deserts could host solar thermal plants, using mirrors to boil water and spin turbines, although that requires new transmission lines. Rooftop solar sidesteps that and cuts shipping electricity long distances. In certain cities and states, homeowners can get tax breaks. Big corporations are investing in major rooftop solar arrays too. Critics say solar is costly, but scale and tax incentives steadily lower prices. In California's Bay Area, nonprofits like Grid Alternatives and job training programs like Solar Richmond partner to install free panels for low-income families. Trainees gain work skills. Homeowners save money. The environment benefits. I used to curse the bills piling up, says a new solar installer. Now I'm proud. Saving money, saving energy, helping. It's a cause. That's the future. Empowered communities, cleaner skies, local jobs. Over 15% of global CO2 comes from deforestation, so halting or reversing rainforest loss is crucial. Eating less meat, especially beef, eases pressure to clear land for cattle and soy feed. Also, ecotourism pays communities to preserve forests. Meanwhile, farmland can store vast amounts of carbon if managed correctly. Organic farming helps soil microbes lock away carbon for the long haul. Likewise, ranchers using rotational grazing and proper soil aeration sequester carbon while producing grass-fed beef. There's potential to draw down around 39% of annual CO2 emissions this way, maybe lowering atmospheric carbon by 50 parts per million. Big numbers for sure, new science, but tantalizing. With so many beneficial alternatives, why aren't we seizing them? Because right now, emitting CO2 costs nothing. Pollution is free. We need a carbon price, or we're stuck in the old system. Whether it's a carbon tax or cap and trade, the principle is the same. Require polluters to pay for the damage. That makes fossil fuels more expensive, giving clean energy a level playing field. So far, Europe's forging ahead, while the U.S. debates. The details matter. Carbon laws must be designed well or risk minimal impact. Many forward-thinking companies act as though carbon has a cost, finding they save money. Disney, for instance, imposes an internal carbon tax on its divisions, prompting huge efficiency gains. Dow Chemical spent $1 billion to save $9 billion. Stonyfield Farm found $7.8 million in annual profits by slashing emissions. Efficiency fosters real savings. But that's within single companies. We need to scale up, fast. Some compare it to World War II's mobilization. In the wake of Pearl Harbor, the U.S. retooled factories at a speed nobody believed possible, surpassing production goals. Harnessing that spirit for clean tech, we can remake our infrastructure with wartime speed. We'll need generational commitment. People like 12-year-old Weston sketching solar arrays and wind turbines, or the activists, architects, politicians, and entrepreneurs everywhere. If we produce 16 terawatts from renewables, tapping just a fraction of the 86,000 terawatts of solar, 32,000 of geothermal, and 870,000 of wind, there's hope. Yes, many remain complacent, but leadership abounds too. We see farmers in Texas, families in Montana, truckers on highways, military officers, and big city mayors, everyone engaging. In the end, it's about personal stories, about future generations. As one father says, eyes misting as solar panels go up, I wish my dad were here to see this, but I'm doing it for him, and for my son. It's a beautiful sight, you know. We can indeed fix this by harnessing technology, wise policies, determined citizens, and the timeless power of nature herself.